Welcome everyone back to another edition of the Coaches Who Lift program review series. Today we are going to take a step into the application side of things with the Conjugate system. As we begin, I would like to invite you to think big picture. This is not meant for any one sport. It's certainly not meant for just powerlifting. It is meant for you to take some tools and apply them to your specific scenario. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, as we kind of went over before with our last series, our last presentation, talking about the system itself, you need to have objectives. And this is addressed to anyone who's going to be coaching a sport, a strength coach for their sport. Think of the demands of the sport itself. Again, we don't want to be just bigger, faster, stronger. We want these qualities to actually translate to our field or sport or whatever it is that we need. In addition to the sport itself, we have to look internally at our athletes. We have to look at the demands of the individuals and the team itself. Let's take American football, for example. If we have someone who runs a hurry up, no huddle offense, chances are our general physical preparation needs are going to be a little bit higher than someone who might run something where we're taking a lot more time in between plays. That's just one thing, one quick example to consider. So with that in mind, we also want to address our weaknesses. So much of the success from a conjugate-based system is derived on addressing weaknesses, both on the team scale and the individual scale. So making sure that we're picking smart movements that will help move us forward, and also developing assessment tools that lets us know we're moving forward in our goals and our planning. And the last thing is other qualities. This might include psychological factors when you're training with a partner, training with a team, anything that you might want to add in to build a competitive atmosphere. I think the conjugate system is already set up with a great foundation for this, since you're continually trying to max out on something new every week. So next one, reverse programming. Now, we're not going to go over macro cycles, 12-week, 9-week, 15-week, what have you. We just want you to think, okay, work backwards from wherever you're going to be. Now, we know conjugate is a system that rises the tide, raising all strength parameters at the same time, but we need to have an objective at the end of the road, whether it's a competitive season, a meet, some sort of big event, athletic event coming up. You want to work towards specificity towards that event. Now, in a sport like baseball, yes, you should absolutely be doing specific things that will help asymmetrical overhead athletes. But at the same time, you can do things to manipulate the body, focusing on one area a little bit more than the other, to really show some performance increase towards the end. Working general to specific, just a general guideline. The furthest away you are from competition, you think of a big funnel opening, the more you can add into a program that doesn't necessarily translate to the sport itself. As you get closer to that end of the season or end of the point, that's when we can start throwing in a little bit more specific stuff. Okay. Now, one thing I want to go over that's specific to how you're going to be programming and thinking in terms of keeping athletes fresh is pendulum waving. This is something that Westside, the conjugate system, is very, what's the correct word? They're very, there's a big point of emphasis for this in terms of keeping athletes coming back fresh. So on your dynamic effort days, you're going to build up, you're working anywhere from 50 to 75% of total intensity of your 1 rep max. And right here is just a sample pendulum waving model you can use. So let's take the bench press. You say you're doing a banded bench press. First week, you've got 55%. Second week, 60%. Last week, third week, you've got 65%. When you work your way up like that, you then at some point have set some sort of new maximum or some other thing to let you know that you've got to change your number, and then you reset back on that 4th week at 55%. So if I'm building up, say my bench press is 225, I retest at the end of week 3, and we've got, 235. So we're going to reset, and that 55% in week 4 is going to be working off of a different number. Now, all of these sets and reps that you're going to be programming are based off of this chart right here. This is a very helpful tool, Prilipin's chart. I would like anyone who's seriously going to be invested in writing their own program, going through trial and error, referring to this constantly, because this type of chart, or this chart right here, guides all of the numbers that you'll be putting into a microcycle, into a week, or into even a workout for that day. There's not really much more I can go on about it other than this is the guideline. And as you'll see in this presentation, there aren't a whole lot of exercises, if any exercises that we'll go over specifically. It's more of, again, the general layout of what we're looking for. So to talk it through just a little bit, 55 to 65% of your 1 rep max, 3 to 6 sets are optimal. Optimal total reps are around that 24 range. The range of reps, 18 to 30, to get that benefit from working within those ranges. Now, whether you're working on strength speed, speed strength, absolute speed, whatever it is, you still want to refer to this chart in order to elicit, or in order to use it as a guideline, so that way you're not taxing yourself too much or not taxing yourself enough. So let's go into actually how a week might look in a typical workout. We're going to go over the maximum effort method first. A maximal effort day, remember, has about 1/3 less of the volume that a repetition effort day would have. So you can see the primary lift, and then a 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and that's it. These workouts should not take more than about an hour, 10 minutes at tops. And when we're talking about the maximum lift, the maximal core lift, that's something you're rotating weekly. You cannot do something 2 weeks in a row and then come back that 3rd week and expect to increase in strength. It's not going to happen. Your nervous system will get shot. You can run into some higher risk of injury. So make sure, just as a safety rule, rotate those exercises weekly. And that might be week 1 is a trap bar deadlift. Week 2 is a sumo deadlift. And then week 3 is a conventional deadlift, working towards, if you're a power lifter, working towards your sport. Now, as far as deadlifting goes, since I'm referring to it, deadlifting isn't something that they recommend you do every week. Whenever you hold a bar and pull, it's one of the most taxing things for your nervous system. In fact, some strength coaches can use it as a performance indicator. Grip strength. If your nervous system is tired, you can't squeeze as hard. You cannot create as much maximal tension. So use your deadlifts sparingly on lower body maximal effort days. You should be doing some sort of knee dominant squat type lift every week, but the deadlifts you can sprinkle in here and out or there throughout. Now, 2A, primary weaknesses focused on strength and using the repetition effort method. If you look back at our previous video, you'll recall that the repetition effort can involve a lot of different things. Tempo lifts, as many reps as possible in a designated amount of time, training to failure in general, cluster sets, lots of different ways, but you want to focus on a strength-based movement. So if we go back to Prilipin's chart, that strength range is anywhere from about 65 to 75%, and your more advanced athletes, people who are a little bit stronger, you're probably looking at upwards of 70 to 75% before they really start getting returns in strength. So something to consider. When you're working that muscle out, go to the antagonist on the next superset. If you're in a team setting like us, the collegiate setting, it's very helpful to use your time efficiently, because a lot of times student athletes will have schedules that they got to get to, practice, whatever, classes, all that kind of thing. We want to make our workouts time efficient. So having an agonist and an antagonist muscle group pairing for this kind of workout, or any workout really, is a useful way to go through our workout. Now, after that, we have the repetition effort focused on a secondary muscle group. Let's use the upper body, for example. So if this were a bench press day, my primary maximal lift might be a board press. Okay, we got a 2 board on our chest. Pressing off of that, we hit our max. Then after that, the 2A, primary strength focused. A lot of times for people, it's going to be their triceps. So we might do a JM press. We could do a floor press, something again targeting the triceps. And then the antagonist working on the back, the pulling muscles. This could be a lat pull down, pull-ups, some sort of row. The repetition effort focused on the secondary muscle group would be the next thing that you think is weak, or the next thing that you have determined is weak. So that could be your delts, your anterior delts. That could be something in your shoulder on the back side. That's something for you to determine. And then paired with it is core. And every single workout that you're doing in this system, do some sort of core exercise. That does not necessarily mean a crunch or sit-up. It does mean try and use that time to help prepare you for your sport as much as possible. So I think bracing is really important. Loaded carries are a great way to work on core strength. Plus you're getting a little bit of general prep work in there as well. So those are some things to consider. Now, the dynamic effort day, again, is going to have a little bit more volume just in the primary exercise itself. Going back to Prilipin's chart, we are going to be working in that 50 to 75% range. So if we're looking at total reps, it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 30 reps, depending on the exercise. So with a little bit more volume right there, we're kind of working towards our goal of that optimal range of reps. The second exercise and third exercise pairings are very similar to a maximum effort day. Again, always targeting our weaknesses. You can get a antagonist repetition effort for a little bit more, pushing and pulling or squatting and hinging, however you determine it, but just throw in a little bit more on that day. I will also say, I mentioned this in the previous video, when you do this system, 4 exercises is typically the minimum towards a target muscle group in order for it to get stronger. And if you want to add a little bit more mass to that, 1 rep maxes are fine, but working on 3 to 6 rep maxes are really going to get you a little bit more hypertrophy in addition to increasing your strength. So 4 exercises minimum. This workout can extend to a 5A or a 6A in terms of exercises. If we need to add a little bit more mass, sort of the maximum recommended is 6 exercises towards a muscle group. Here at the end, we have GPP and or core. If you want to make it a little bit longer, a little bit more taxing, you can do both of them. But general physical prep can be slam balls or med balls for time. So how many reps can you knock out with a 20-pound med ball for 5 minutes straight, rest for a minute or 2, and then go after it again. It could be sled drags, sled pulls, lots of different things. You can also use GPP for the upper body. You can be doing face pulls with a sled, tricep extensions with a sled. So we're working on both heart rate and our weaknesses there. Again, your opportunities to improve the athlete or yourself, if you're using this system, come with assessing what you need the most. Now, I am really excited to talk about this section right here. This has been pivotal for me in my own training. Just what I've noticed throughout the past 4 weeks as I've started a new cycle of Conjugate, the extra workouts that you do in a day that are 30 minutes recovery workouts, or these extra workouts, can be the key to recovering faster. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive. You're working out more, what you break down. The body responds in a way to where it can bounce back from the previous workout if you work out smart the second time. So the guidelines that Louis set forth and what the Westside Conjugate kind of sets forth is you don't want to go over 30 minutes. It is an intentional effort. So as soon as that clock starts, you are locked in. You don't want to be in there horsing around trying to do a bodybuilder workout for an hour and a half, taking your time. After about 30 minutes for the second workout, you're free-flowing testosterone and growth hormone. You're not going to see as much return. So you don't really want to go over that. Plus, you're running the risk of overtraining. So 30 minutes, intentional effort, targeting your weaknesses. Again, I think for me, especially with my upper body, targeting my triceps when I do these extra workouts, if I'm doing an upper body lift, super, super big for me. The main exercise, as far as the workout is set up, it's main exercise, secondary with it, and then a second paired set with the targeted area, and then some more GPP or core. This right here, if you were to fill out every single one of these sections, you'd be running really close to 30 minutes. It doesn't have to go all the way up to that. It can be 15, 20 minutes. But again, maximum intention does not have to be maximal effort. Remember the rule of 72 between maximal effort workouts. If I'm having a max effort lower body day on a Monday, I need to wait at least until Thursday before I have a dynamic effort lower body day. Very, very important. So this one right here, I think is huge. If you follow just the maximum effort and repetition effort, dynamic effort with repetition thrown in, if you follow that, you can get up to 4 days of training in a week. Some people can even split it to 3. But this right here, I think you can work upwards of anywhere 6 to 9 times effectively in a week. And some people might be able to do a little bit more, a little bit less. So that's kind of the application side of things. I'm going to invite Coach Delph Montgomery back in here, and we're going to talk a little bit about sort of, well, different things, but the sports applied and all of that.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks. I think that's something that a lot of people need to hear. Something that I like to think about when I do program for my teams and stuff like that, especially for the like personal weaknesses that you're doing the extra training for. I like to have what I think the team needs as far as their sport goes, and you can make that, a little bit more specific for that. But at the same time, I don't want to just kind of lock that athlete in there if that's actually not one of their weaknesses. So like once you start, you'll start to notice, or you'll have some assessment tools set up to where maybe the hamstring isn't exactly one of the weaknesses for that specific athlete. So now you can change and make it more glute med focused or whatever it is. But having a general idea of where you start is going to be really important instead of just waiting until you do all your assessments and then making your decisions based on that.
Right. Absolutely. It's something that's a continually evolving process. And then having several tests that are quick and easy to repeat throughout the year, I think it's absolutely an essential part of your program.
I don't think you necessarily, something that I've noticed as well is conjugate is something that you can for sure do all year round. But at the same time, there's been many semesters and seasons where I might just do a conjugate phase where it's like 6 to 10 weeks we're going to do conjugate and that's it. Right. I think a lot of people kind of think, because the power lifters, they do it for 52 weeks and this is like, that's where it's going to get the most work. Like there's times where we'll just do a conjugate block and it works great. But then for whatever reason, we make a decision to get out of it and do a little bit more as far as the, competition specific stuff that works best for us.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really great about this model. If you read West Side Book of Methods, you might get the impression that it's that way or the highway. But with the system itself, when you look at it from a global perspective, it can fit into a annual periodization model. And having a conjugate block, as you said, is a great way to switch up training. I think keeping things fresh for the athlete is really important. A lot of athletes, when they go through a training year, if the coach isn't switching up exercises or if they're doing the same thing over and over again, they'll lose interest. The body obviously adapts, and conjugate is definitely a system that's built on variability and maximal effort. But I mean, even after a while with this kind of system, you might want to switch it up and move towards triphasic, which I know we'll talk about that in another series, or some other type of training. But you can still fit conjugate within the big picture of, okay, I want to use conjugate for this next 6 weeks to develop maximum strength, or you can use it to develop maximum power. It's all on how you want to use the system itself.
Yeah, that's something that, again, I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about because, again, if they were to just read that book, that's what the book tells them. But to really understand exactly what you're thinking that you need to get done, and then you can make that happen. I think also something to think about as well is to also know your type of athlete. Like you're talking about, if you have that athlete who struggles to stay on task because maybe after 3 to 4 weeks they get bored of exercises, this might be something that could revolutionize their playing style. But at the same time, you might have someone who just really likes the structure and being able to program to make it work for them best and not for your own ego or programming style.
That always comes down to the individual versus team demands. Every athlete that I've worked with for the most part enjoys this. If there's someone who enjoys working hard and switching things up, if you're someone who's working with a sport where weight training isn't necessarily a big part of their upbringing growing up, so I mean, being fair, working with a lot of softball players, especially when I was at the Division III level at Millsaps, I was honestly their first experience with strength and conditioning, so I wouldn't give them this necessarily, but after a year, maybe a few months, once they get comfortable and understand what it's like to brace and strain against heavy loads, then you can incorporate something like this, and I think it'll, send them on a vault. It'll spring them forward even further. But it's definitely, you have to be smart when you implement some kind of training like this.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that, again, with what your presentations were the last 2 weeks, this is going to be a great kind of guideline to show you exactly where, if you have no idea what it's like, to just start doing it yourself before you really program it for people. Because again, you'll start to feel those things, and with those rules and you start to try it out yourself, you'll start to notice some other things as well to make it work for your team. Again, it doesn't have to be 1 rep maxes twice a week. Again, it could be 3 to 5. It could be whatever it is to make it safer for your athletes and still make sure that they're getting good strain.
If I could walk away with, 5 rules, I guess, at the end of this, is number 1, let's just use the individual. Know yourself before you start this kind of training. Know what your weaknesses are. You need to do an honest look at assessment and training. Make sure you set up an end goal of what you want to hit. Then after that, after you've done all that, the assessing and end goal, make sure you're following the rule of 72 when you're training throughout the week. Make sure that you are smart with your recovery workouts, because that really is the secret weapon. And then the 5th one, could be the most important one, is I think you should have a training partner with this, someone who's going to push you. There's a lot of times where you might not be feeling it, but your body can do it on those maximal effort days, and someone who's there to come alongside you and either yell, give you a smack on the back, whatever it is, that they know you well enough to get you motivated to train hard, I think is really big. Plus, there's always the safety aspect of it too, someone to spot you during maximal lifts. We don't want to be training to failure week after week, because that's just asking for trouble. But those would be some of the things that I would just say are absolute musts when doing this, because again, from my own personal experience and then watching it work with my athletes, it can really take your strength game to the next level.
Yeah, and again, you can even make conversations as far as, the culture goes and stuff like that of your weight room. But this would be a really great place once you guys maybe get out of a couple just general strength phases to kind of get into exactly see maybe where your team is at as far as, the strength and unity of the team. Again, the weight room a lot of times is way more than sets and reps. This is something that they can actually, you almost get to kind of see how your team would react when it's late game and who can you count on, or who's going to be the person who's going to push the team and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you giving me the time. Everyone who's tuned in today, thank you for giving me your time and attention. If y'all ever have questions about this or want to talk to us about this more, our contact information is in the description. And again, thank you guys. John, you got anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.